So Moses here at w.a.production, and today we're going to be taking a little look at FabFilter's new plugin Timeless 3, which is the follow-up to their very well known Timeless 2 delay plugin. They've added a whole host of new features and overhauled the GUI. So without further ado, let's get into Ableton and have a look at the new improvements they've made.
What about making your sound better?
So for this demo track, I've actually used the majority of sounds from w.a.production's Babylon synth, which is definitely worth checking out, and I've also used some samples from our sample pack. So go ahead, check out the links in the description to see how you can gain access to these and what they can do to your productions. So without further ado, let's start looking at the uphauled GUI of Timeless. So as you can see just upon first glance, they've darkened the display for one and also given you the option to have a much bigger display with the small, medium, large and extra large sizes that we're now very familiar with a lot of the FabFilter plugins. They've also added these slider sections which help with the modulation, which you can assign sources of down here. I also really like the fact they've added a taps delay section here and just generally kind of overhauled the whole thing. I always found Timeless 2 was not the friendliest thing to use, whereas this one really encourages me to dive in and kind of get to work. So the main place I really have this running is on this lead synth. So you can tell that they've really overhauled the GUI. They've given it this much darker theme, which I absolutely love. You also have a lot more display options to see how the delays are actually working, and it kind of just feels like it's a lot more in line with their other plugins. This really helps because I found that Timeless 2 always stood out a little bit too much and was definitely needing an upgrade. They've also added a whole host of other things, so you've now got this drive, you have a lo-fi, which is just a bit crusher, you have diffuse, which is reverb. Now this comes in super handy when we're working with vocals because sometimes you want a bit of a slapback delay on it that also adds some reverb. This is quite similar to the Wave's Mani M delay unit that they produce. You then have dynamics, which is very similar to how Saturn 2 works, and then you have a pitch shift, which is also very nice on vocals as well as lead synths. You then have the standard kind of delay settings here with your left and right balance, you then have a feedback, and then you have just the levels and the stereo width of the sound. So one thing they have improved on massively is the modulation sources and controls that we have. You can see here that we have this new slider source. This is very similar to what they've got in Saturn 2 and just allows an extra level of kind of macro control like you might find in some synths like Serum and other kind of familiar platforms that we are quite used to. And it allows you to assign multiple parameters to this slider and then control it yourself. Because I found that sometimes even if you had it on an LFO or an envelope generator, sometimes you didn't quite get the level of control or preciseness that you want. So it's really great to see that they have this slider control in here now. Overall though, this plugin isn't that much different to Timeless 2, with the changes that they've introduced being substantial enough to make it definitely worth the investment. So I'll just solo out the lead synth that I've used for this kind of little demo track, and the lead synth again is using Babylon, which is one of our own synthesizers, and this is from the Cyberpunk expansion pack, which I definitely recommend checking out and downloading if you want that kind of edgy sci-fi approach to your tracks. And so this is the intro without the Timeless on it. Now let's see what we can do with Timeless 3 to really amp up the sound and give it a unique characteristic that you might not find in some other delays that you can get. So let's first of all start off just with the delay time. Again, you can see that it's super nice how this display moves as you adjust the delay. So you can see what your taps are doing, the intensity of them, and how long they delay for, and the volume that they are delaying for. You can hear as well that it's a really clean pitch shifting algorithm that they've used for this, which I think is really cool. And when we look at some of the vocals, we'll see how we can use that to really amp up our vocal sounds and give it some unique textures. You then have the drive here. You then have this lo-fi, which is basically just a bit crusher. Something else to pay attention to is that all these effects that we're adding aren't actually affecting our initial source sound, they're just affecting the delayed sounds, which I think is a really cool little touch and helps you create these weird kind of otherworldly textures just using a very, very basic delay plugin. You then have diffuse. which I think sounds really cool and just helps to really spread out the sound a little bit and give it a separation from your initial sound. We then have dynamics, which when used in correspondence with the diffuse creates a really nice accentuation of the diffuse sound. And then we have the pitch sound, You then have a few other controls, like you can freeze the delay and you can change the way that the delay behaves, and you can also put it into synced mode. You can then also alter how your ping pongs are affected. And then over here you just have stereo width, wet and mix, as well as your feedback. Now something else that is also quite cool about Timeless Free is how the filters work. Again, you get this in a lot of delays with the filters, but again, because it's FabFilter, they just have this extra sound and clarity to all of their EQs and filters, which I find you don't find in most other plugins. Which again really lends itself to allowing you to play with and distort the sound coming from both of the speakers independently. You can then even further that down here with the modulation section, and again there's not much that's necessarily different here to other FabFilter products or the previous Timeless. So we've heard what it sounds like on a lead, let's hear what we can do to vocals with this plugin. Now this is just a little vocal line that I've got from one of our sample packs. Again, check the links down in the description for access to all of these and more. We are constantly uploading new sample packs to our site and they're all definitely worth checking out and using to add extra weight and extra size to your productions. So I've got the vocal group soloed here. Oh yeah. And now, this is what I kind of came up with it to give it this weird, interesting texture. Oh yeah. You can hear again that that pitch shifting algorithm is super clean and doesn't introduce any real artifacts or distortion to the sound, which really helps, especially if you're going to be stacking up these delays and having them going for a long time, or else it could get really quite messy. Oh yeah. So you can hear how you can create some really cool and interesting effects using this delay unit. Something else that's really cool about these controls is that at the moment we have this source slider set up to be able to duck the level. So when we have the input coming in from our vocal line, it just simply ducks the delay signal and gives a bit of sidechaining within the actual plugin, which I think is a really cool feature. And again, just shows how flexible and modifiable these different modulation controls are. And it feels like FabFilter have really thought about what they're doing with this. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So we can really see how Timeless Free builds upon the legacy of Timeless 2 and adds a valuable addition to our plugin arsenal. If you would like to add any more plugins to your arsenal and you like the sounds that I've been using in this video, then head over to our website, which is linked in the description, where you can find sample packs, plugins and a whole host of other things to amp up your productions and take you up another level. If you like the video, make sure to leave a comment and hit subscribe and ding the little bell notification so you get notified for more videos like this. Until the next one, peace out.